animals out on the plain, it could be Africa. Doris Lessing's early writing is Africa-based, revealing both her passion for the country and the painful sense of not belonging. In a preface to her African Stories, 1964, she wrote, "Africa is not a place to visit unless one chooses to be in exile ever afterwards from an inexplicable, majestic silence lying just over the border of memory or of thought." Lessing's exile from Africa is both physical and a metaphor for other displacements in her life. She has been exiled within her family. She is also a voluntary exile, an inner and outer expatriate. She seems to experience life at a remove, perhaps to soothe a painful sense of homelessness. Her disquiet and disaffection powerfully energize her work. When she coolly observes the world we know, she is able to render it for her readers in a new, clarifying way. Unfettered by boundaries, as a writer she has never stayed fixed within any genre, belief system, or locale, even ranging beyond our planet. Her restless imagination suggests the exile's wanderings, but finally it is writing itself that is Doris Lessing's truest home. Chapter 1. Born into a Broken World. "We use our parents like recurring dreams," writes Doris Lessing, "to be entered into when needed. They are always there for love or for hate." Like a detective on an elusive case, Doris Lessing has studied old photographs of her parents. Are there traces to be found of the people they became? Would she discover the ultimate source of her own years of waking nightmares? There is a photo of Lessing's mother, Emily Maud McVie, in adolescence. She is a tall girl with a round, confident face. Her hair is pulled back and tied with a black bow. She wears a school uniform, blousy white shirt and long dark skirt, a proud young citizen of her beloved British Empire. Born in 1884, Emily was named after her mother, Emily Flower, who died giving birth to a son when Emily was 3 years old. Emily Maud's father, John William McVie, had worked himself up to the middle class, from office clerk to manager of a bank in suburban London. Class was immensely important to him, the yardstick by which he measured his opinions and decisions. He must have been smitten with his beautiful young wife. How else could he have overlooked the fact that, during her short life, she had never really abandoned her working-class habits and tastes? Had she lived past the age of 32, their marriage might well have foundered, as McVie became increasingly preoccupied with his social position. As it was, McVie never mentioned his wife to his children, and their home contained not a single picture of her. It was almost impossible for young Emily to conjure up a truthful image of her mother. There were only the vague memories of her earliest childhood and the obvious disapproval of the household staff who raised the 3 children after their mother's death. With no one to counteract the servants' version of her mother as an imprudent common woman, Emily Maud adopted that view as well. In Under My Skin, the first volume of her autobiography, Doris Lessing recalls the disdain in her mother's voice whenever she mentioned Emily Flower. Her pursed mouth and little sniff seemed to imply that Emily Flower's death was fitting punishment for her lower-class ways. McVie remarried when his 3 children were still young, but his elegant new wife had little interest in taking on a mother's role. McVie was not troubled by his wife's aloofness towards his children. He was equally remote as a father, stern and demanding, with never a gesture or expression of love. The only family life Emily experienced was when everyone attended what her father considered important public rituals of the empire, the funeral of Queen Victoria, Edward VII's coronation, or the visits of the Kaiser and other heads of state. To her daughter, Emily expressed no love for her father, but did insist that she respected and admired him. His formal portrait hung on the mud wall of their African childhood home in southern Rhodesia. Doris detested the man she saw inside the ornate frame. His corpulent form and chubby face, greased hair and old-fashioned tightly tailored clothes were the very embodiment of what Doris disliked about England. In that image she saw the arrogance and repression of the British Empire and the class system that went with it. Despite her loveless background, Emily Maud was a lively girl with many friends. She often went to the theatre, musicals, and late suppers with her friends. She liked the rough and tumble of hockey and lacrosse, and less boisterous sports such as tennis and bicycle excursions. She did well in school, far better than her dull-witted brother, and, unusual for the time, her father considered sending her to university. One can imagine McVee's enthusiasm when he told his daughter of his enlightened plans, and his dismay when she rejected the rare and costly opportunity of a university education. Emily stood her ground. Although she was a talented musician who dreamed of becoming a concert pianist, her practical nature, together with a genuine desire to care for people, made her feel she should first be trained as a nurse. McVee was furious. Respectable middle-class girls did not become nurses. If Emily went through with these shocking plans, she would get no help from him. That might have been the end of it, but John McVee underestimated his daughter's determination. Emily went off to train at London's Royal Free Hospital, where the work was hard and the wages low. Despite the obstacles in her path, she passed her final exams with high marks, which no doubt bolstered her self-assurance. By the time Emily Maude graduated to being Sister McVee, she had put the dream of being a concert pianist behind her, although later in life she would grow melancholy about abandoning music. She would lament who she once was and might have become. As a newly licensed nurse, however, she was happy with her work. She loved being needed. The gratitude of her patients when she came to their bedsides was like an expression of their love, which Doris Lessing believes was her mother's true motivation for entering nursing. Emily fed her hunger for love through the people who needed and valued her. Despite the heavy demands of her workday, Emily filled her evenings with a busy social life and played the organ at various churches. When she could, she went on holidays with friends, and no matter how crowded her life, she found time to read prominent authors of the day, such as George Bernard Shaw. Nursing was always arduous work, but its demands dramatically escalated with the onset of war in 1914. Trainloads of soldiers arrived at the Royal Free Hospital. Sister McVee ministered to these wounded bodies with such dedication that a number of the men wrote poems to her. She was proud of these tributes, and kept them in an album that she treasured long past her nursing days. Doris Lessing's father, Alfred Cook Taylor, was born in 1886 in a small farming village near Colchester, where his father was a bank clerk. The job was respectable but lowly, and the family had to make do on very little money. Alfred's mother, Caroline, who appears in a baby picture of Alfred, is described by Doris Lessing as a fat, plain woman with the face of a head cook. And indeed, Mrs. Taylor worked wonders in the kitchen on her limited resources. Decades later, when Alfred suffered from diabetes and had to follow a Spartan diet, he rhapsodized over memories of suet and treacle pudding and ham and sausages smoked at home. Besides the all-important Bible, there was apparently little interest in books, and certainly no money for them. On Sundays, the family went to church 3 times, and all week Alfred anxiously anticipated that day which always recurred too quickly. Alfred had an older brother who was superior to him in school, and their father beat his younger son when he didn't do as well. When they finished school, both young men became bank clerks, like their father, but Alfred remained a clerk while his older brother rose quickly to a managerial post. Lessing says her father found little pleasure in his clerk's job, but he tried hard to improve his skills, and he even laboriously changed his handwriting because one of his superiors disparaged it. Alfred may have felt that he would not mind his bank clerk's job so much if his personal life were richer. Whatever the reason, one day Alfred decided to live on his own in Luton, about an hour away from the family home. It was a happy move. Away from his family and the narrow confines of his little village, he was free to indulge the side of him that loved to play, to be expansive, to be free of imposed arbitrary constraints. He swam and rowed, played football and cricket, sang at musicals, and danced with the local girls, thinking nothing of walking 10 or 15 miles to attend dance parties that might be held 2 or 3 times every week. He would stay until the very last, walking back under the stars. By the time he reached home, he could often see the beginnings of a rising sun. Buoyed by the previous evening's pleasures, he would wash and shave, make tea and porridge, and set off for work. The girls in Luton all loved him. For a time he was engaged to one girl and then broke it off and became engaged to her sister. Their mother was equally smitten with their charming, handsome suitor, and until the second broken engagement, welcomed him into her home as if he were her son. Doris Lessing recalls that when Alfred told this story in front of his wife, he repeated it many times, like all his reminiscences.